Hello, Taylor Elwood here, and welcome to Sovereign Submission. Today, I want to talk about the topic of poetry as a devotional activity of submission. And when we think about submission, you might think of kneeling, you might think of your mistress beating you or having you do all kinds of humiliating activities, or you might even imagine that or you might imagine being of service or doing other things. And all these things can occur, and all of them occur often ideally in a consensual way. But I think submission takes many different forms. And today what I want to talk about is poetry as a form of devotional submission, because I think the power of our words is the power that eroticizes connection and creates desire and longing on the part of both the submissive and his mistress. Welcome, Sheena. Glad to have you here. So, when I think about poetry, the thing that's really interesting for me is that lately I've been reclaiming my voice as a poet. I've written poems over the years, but I went through a dry spell for a while, and I went through it because I was basically kind of having to take back my voice from a relationship that I'd been in, which had been really messy and complicated, and where, among other things, the poetry that I'd written hadn't been appreciated. And it made me not want to share my poems or even write them. But in the last few weeks, I've been starting to write poetry again. And it's been a very interesting process of reclaiming my voice, reclaiming my power and sovereignty through words. And in sovereign submission, we hold the container of both sovereignty and submission at the same time. The sovereignty is the claiming of our own inherent and innate power and presence and being, and what it means to truly choose to live a life in a very specific way. The submission is the act of surrender, the willingness to accept her leadership and her guidance and direction in whatever shape, way, or form you two have agreed upon, or more, depending on what your circumstances are. And as a sovereign submissive, one of the things that I find really important is the power of our words. Your words shape connection, they create desire. What you speak, what you write, or what you don't speak or write have deep power. Welcome, Chris. Glad to have you here. So think about it. Poetry is one of the original forms of seduction. A well written poem melts walls, creates desire, fans the flames of eroticism. Poetry speaks to something deep within. It is calling to what we truly want to experience and doing it in a way that takes the language and plays with it. As a form of devotion, it is an act of connection with her. It is a way that you are truly showing up and saying, "This is how you move me. This is how I experience you. And I want to share the deep inner wisdom and knowing that I experience through poetry as a way of honoring you and showing you my devotion." Poetry is a process of unveiling the hidden and turning it into a message. And it's not prose where it's just written out and it's like, this is this or that is that. No, it's something much deeper. Tugs on the strings of the soul. It lights up the heart. It makes her wet because she can hear and feel and read your devotion in the words that you have written. And they go straight through to the deepest parts of her, showing her just how much you want to give her the fullness of your being. This is part of what it means to devote ourselves in submission to someone. It's not just the kinky fantasies that we might have. It is the unveiling of the deepest parts of ourselves. And poetry is one of the most potent forms of connection that brings that through. A well written poem is it's like an expression of your soul that slowly peels away everything that you know to reveal the unknown and bring it into focus and clarity so that she can explore it with you. Yes, she can break you down or she can lift you up. She can have you do a variety of activities or things depending on what you've agreed upon. But think about the power of your words, the sovereignty of expressing just how much she moves you, how that flow of the erotic feminine initiates you into the deeper mysteries of submission and masculinity. This is part of what we discover through our own words. Our words are gateways that open up who we are and reveal to her the depths of our commitment and our devotion to her, to be of service to her, to give ourselves to her, to fully allow ourselves to be opened up and seen. That's the power of poetry. Welcome, Paul. Glad to have you here. Think about your words for a moment. And some of you on here may think to yourselves like, okay, this all sounds great, Taylor, but I'm not a poet. Or I don't know how to write that way. Let me first of all reassure you that it is possible to write poetry. And it starts by taking that first step, putting pen to paper or fingers to keyboard. Your poetry may not be perfect. And she may have some advice or suggestions or things to follow through on if you want to write her poetry. Yet your poetry is a sincere expression of your soul. It is, and your heart, it is a deep exploration of your desires. It is an unveiling of how you experience her in the world. And there is sincerity and there is devotion and there is depth in that. This is why it's important to give ourselves that space to explore creatively. One of the realizations that I had recently was a result of an experience where I thought about like creativity and how creativity comes in many different forms. and how the erotic flow of sex plays a role in creativity. We think of sex often when we think of sex, we might think of it in terms of like the most basic primal need of procreation, right? But sex is so much more than that. Sex is an exploration of creativity, and creativity comes in many different forms. It comes in writing, it comes in poetry, it comes in art and music, and sometimes it comes in woodworking, sometimes it comes in other things. The soul of the poet is a person who is fully connected to the artistic and creative explorations within himself or herself. But we're going to talk about himself in this case because we're looking at this from the frame of the sovereign submissive. He's in touch with the deepest layers of himself, and he conveys that effortlessly through poetry. Well, there may be effort involved, let me be clear, but nonetheless, he's touching on something deeper within himself, the deep inner muse, and he's allowing that to come forth. And she, his mistress, is the external, the muse, made manifest. She guides him with gentle hands, or maybe not so gentle as the case may be. She brings him into awareness and presence through her response to the words that he has written. And at the same time, his words are an offering of the deepest part of himself. I want you to take that for a moment and really connect with that. What does it mean to offer the deepest part of myself to her? What does it mean to give myself to her so fully and freely that she experiences the depth of my connection, the depth of my desire, the depth of my submission through the words I write? And of course, you're going to share the depths of your submission in many other ways. And all of those ways are valid. And yet, I think there's something powerful about the commitment to write a poem and share it. The vulnerability that it takes, the transparency of being able to say, here's some part of myself that I'm sharing with you that is so special because of how it experiences the world. And I am giving this as a gift to you. And make no mistake, gentlemen, your submission is a gift. It is the sovereignty of your being that you are gifting to her. And that transmutes everything that you know into an alchemy of being remade and sculpted and designed and directed through your willingness to kneel, your willingness to give over all the performance and all the pressure that you have been living in your life as a man. That's the power of this expression, this poetic devotion, this dedication is just another form of it. You're giving over everything that you know in order to fully come into your own being. And this is powerful. How often have we allowed ourselves that opportunity and presence to do just that and say to her, here I am. Here I am, and I have laid myself out before you. For many men, it may be the moment when she spanks you or when she penetrates you. And there's also something very powerful about revealing through words, through the decision to be poetic, just the depths of how she touches you. And if you're like, okay, that sounds great. And how do I do it? I can recommend books on poetry. That's certainly a possibility. But really what it boils down to is that you take your words and start writing. Your first few poems may not be that great, but they are your poems. They are your words. They are something important and powerful and present that you are bringing into manifestation through the decision to share something deeply primal about the way she's moved you. And this is part of submission, is that we give ourselves over. We surrender the most secret part of ourselves. We unveil and allow ourselves to be fully seen in the process of unveiling before her gaze and her touch. She knows us. She sees us. She is with us. And we are fully taken into her mystery. We are initiated by her into the divine cosmos itself and into the descent into the underworld. She strips us down and builds us back up. This is also part of submission and surrender. This is also part of that experience of devotion. We give ourselves over so fully through our words, through the choice to say something that speaks to her and shows her our willingness to be initiated through her mysteries into the great unknown. And really, when you think about it, submission is ultimately a journey into the great unknown. You can have your fantasies and your ideas as to what submission is going to look like, and you can share them with her. But to truly submit, to truly surrender, means giving all of your desires over to her and becoming curious about going into the unknown because you don't know what will happen. If you're holding on to a specific idea as to what you think will happen or what you want to happen, you haven't truly submitted. You've performed submission. That's not the same thing as giving yourself over fully to the experience of being transformed through your devotion to her and your service and your willingness to embrace and allow for how she will transform your life. We often, I think, as men in this world, we often hold on to the illusion of control because that's what we've been taught to do. Yet, how many men secretly ache to let go of that control? We've been told you need to show up in this way in the world. You have to lead. You have to do all these other things. And yet, it strikes me as quite profound how many men I see and connect with who want something different. Why do we want something different? Because in the natural order of things, it makes sense that a man might kneel and give himself over fully in her service through devotion. And by doing so, find himself liberated because he's no longer having to take on all that performance and pressure. And although he might go out into the world and work at a job or do whatever else it is that he needs to do, and he might show up in those environments in a very specific way, in the most secret parts of his life, in the most important places, he kneels, he lets go, he surrenders, and he knows in the deepest part of his being that whatever face he might show to the world, the reality that he shows to her is something else altogether. And that is another reason to write poetry to her. Because in writing poetry to her, what is he doing? He is again surrendering and opening up the most secret parts of himself, the places that perhaps he keeps behind a wall so that she can go through that wall and see him right there, fully present, fully being. This is part of the power and presence of our devotion. Welcome, Nora. Glad to have you here. So, I would urge you to explore taking pen to paper, fingers to keyboard, and write some poetry. Don't get too stuck on a specific form or anything like that. Like, do your research. That's a good thing to do. Most importantly, give voice to your deepest desires and your willingness to surrender them to her. Give voice to the depths of your being. And in sharing them with her, allow yourself to be alchemized, to transcend everything you know, because you've sublimated the depths of your being and pulled out what no one else normally sees. That's it for today. I just wanted to share a different perspective on submission, using poetry as a form of devotion. Thank you for being here with me, and I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your week moving forward.